From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Sanctuary, refuge, hospital. This is no snake pit. The doors are locked, but it's not a prison that we enter. For these locks are meant to protect patients. They open as though by magic when the sick no longer need the safeguards of hospital care. In the meantime, those who carry the keys are not guards. Joe Fuller, psychiatric aide, is no man's keeper but his own, his living. This ward is his work world. It's a strange world to us.
Come in, I hear you, Jupiter. Come in, Jupiter, I hear you. Hello. Huh? I don't read you, Jupiter. Hello, Jupiter. Jupiter!
What's this, Mr. Jordan?
I made a no tea.
Very nice.
Would you want one?
Fine, thanks a lot.
That's right. Throw away those chains. We don't like chains around here. Do we, boys?
Yeah, boy. Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Jordan.
You're welcome. I gotta go now. I go on eat for the night, man and Frank.
Hey.
Jordan's a lot easier to take since he started occupational therapy.
Yeah, gives him a chance to work off a lot of steam. Nice court, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hear you're going home this weekend, Mr. Mills.
Yep, and maybe for longer than that.
Good.
I'll be glad to go home. It's been almost a year now. And you know, Joe, I was as bad as that guy over there when I first came here.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, that reminds me. I found a pipe in his locker. I wonder if he'd like to smoke it.
Maybe he would. Sit up, Mr. Russ. Come on. How'd you like to smoke? This is your old pipe.
Perhaps later. Perhaps next time. Of all the tools in Joe's work kit, time is the most useful. The ability to accept time as an ally is usually called patience. Joe has learned to be patient. Patient as a mother. Patient as a nurse. At times it must seem to him as patient as Job himself. For Joe's charges, like children, have many conflicting needs according to their personalities, their states of illness, their physical conditions, their momentary whims. The aide is the only constant human being in an environment marked by inconstancy. When one man delights in harmless mischief, another must be protected from his antics. Sometimes one can help another, a sign of his own improvement. But more often, it's Joe's personal attention that's wanted. His word, his touch. Sometimes a bemused prodding. A gentle reminder where he is. While others seem to have lost all memory of the simple tasks they learned as children. No longer able to take care of themselves, they depend on others to help them live from day to day. Joe helps, without resentment, without contempt. This is his work.
Dr. Brand, this is Mr. Hart, a new psychiatric aide. I'm bringing him up on this ward because you're so short-handed.
We sure can use him. Glad to meet you. This is Miss O'Malley. She's the nurse in charge in this ward. Hello. And this is Mr. Fuller. He's a psychiatric aide like yourself. Have you ever worked in a mental hospital before?
Oh, sure. I know all about loony bins.
We prefer to think of this as a hospital where we treat sick people.
Well, I didn't mean nothing.
No, I realize you didn't. You see, these are all special patients who are getting the best that the hospital can offer them. There's electroshock, there's recreational therapy, there's occupational therapy, and the companionship of other men.
I usually work on a back ward where they don't have that.
Yes, I know. But for the time being, I'd like you to work here with Mr. Fuller. He has more than he can handle.
Anything you say.
Well, Mr. Fuller will explain your duties to you.
Well, like the doctor said, on our ward, we try to give a lot of time to each patient. It's kind of a new idea. The more treatment they get, better chance they have of going home.
I don't go for stuff like that. I like a ward where the doctor comes through once a day and spends 5 minutes. How did you get into this racket in the first place?
My wife. This was Helen's hometown. She used to work over in the administration building before we were married. Then I opened a small radio repair shop downtown, only it didn't pan out. Then she got her old job back, and I took this job. How about you?
I guess I just needed a job, too. But I ain't doing this kind of work for fun. And if the doctors and nurses ride me too much, well, I'll just move on.
Sometimes I think of moving on myself. Might not be a bad idea.
On a job like this, you learn not to consider yourself judge and jury. Joe usually takes people as they come. On the other hand, he doesn't have to like everything he sees.
Ready?
Sweet Adeline, my Adeline, at last, sweetheart, for you I find. In all my dreams, your fair face beams. You're the flower of my heart.
Cut that out! Try and make me.
What's your trouble, Mac?
I don't want to sing.
Okay, then don't sing. Go ahead, Bill.
All right, men, I've been working on the railroad. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time of day.
Take it easy. What that guy needs is a good beating up.
Look, Frank, that stuff doesn't go around here.
And I thought you were a right guy.
I'm okay, but you can't go around hitting guys. McManus wouldn't hurt anybody. Besides, he's in here because he's seriously sick.
in the kitchen with Dinah, drumming on the old banjo. Dee-fi-diddly-di-o, 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 drumming on the old banjo. Dinah wants to blow, Dinah wants to blow your horn.
Dr. Brand usually confers with the nurse and the aide after his morning visit with the patients.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to transfer some of your men off the ward. How about some of those who haven't responded to treatment?
Well, Doctor, there's old Mr. Novins. He's had over 50 electric shock treatments, and there's no change at all.
Well, all right. We'll transfer him. How about Rusk? He hasn't improved much.
Well, you were telling me about him this morning, weren't you, Mr. Fuller?
No, it was just a little thing.
Well, tell us anyway, Mr. Fuller.
Well, I've been trying to get Mr. Rusk to smoke his pipe, but he's never shown much interest in it. And the other day I saw him holding it, and today when I offered him a light, he accepted it.
Well, let's keep him around a little while longer and see what develops. I'm glad you persisted with that pipe, Mr. Fuller. You know, we depend upon you for the little things. They can be mighty important. That just shows you what you could do with more help around here. How does that list look now?
Underhand.
In mental hospitals nowadays, exercise is a prescribed activity. For not only does it keep bodies in good shape, it involves the patients with each other and provides a normal, familiar outlet for feelings. The leader is usually a trained recreational therapist.
Strike one.
Not all of the patients are capable of taking part. Some of them can't coordinate sufficiently to throw a ball. Others are unable to maintain interest in anything outside themselves.
Ready? Come on, Steve. Get the ball here.
But the games bring the men out of the wards and into the sunshine. There's something relaxing in just the sounds of people enjoying themselves.
Thank you, Harry.
Harry?
Mr. Rusk had talked. Joe was so surprised and perplexed that he never knew who won the game that afternoon.
Come on.
A few days later, he was attending one of the classes that are part of an aide's training in the care of the mentally ill. Dr. Brand was discussing the dynamics of identification.
Even our rules for living are designed to reach the patient with what for him is an unbelievable idea, that he can trust us. Common sense suggests that you begin by always behaving in a way that makes you his friend, not his enemy, even when you think he's incapable of understanding what you're doing. You can also try to know the patient as a human being, liking what is likable about him, understanding what is not likable about him. If we remind him of someone who made him suffer, he'll mistrust us. And if we remind him of someone he liked, he may come around to trust us. Yes, Mr. Fuller.
The other day, one of my patients, Mr. Rusk, down in recreational therapy, he fumbled a ball. And when I picked it up for him, he thanked me, and he called me Harry. I was wondering who Harry was.
Does anyone any ideas? Mr. Jackson?
It's possible that this Harry is someone that Mr. Rusk had played ball with in his younger day.
But he's in his 50s. That would have been a long time ago. Although maybe he was thinking back on happier times. Sometimes they do that.
They do indeed. You can check with one of the social workers, Mr. Fuller. Find out if there's a Harry in the family. But no matter what you find out, I suggest you spend a little more time with him.
Mr. Rusk has a son named Harry, an only child. Wait a minute.
The boy was killed in action in the Pacific.
That's it.
Now that Joe knew something about the pain that Mr. Rusk had been unable to bear, the patient became a real person for him. Waiting for still more to emerge would be easier now.
How about a game, Mr. Rusk?
For Joe often found it difficult to live and work among the masks that the mentally ill use to protect themselves from pressures they can't stand. They like the formal relationships of card playing or checkers because the rules don't change. Each act does not become a problem involving feelings. Yet Joe was aware of suppressed feelings. How else could one explain the bits of odd behavior that seemed to have nothing to do with the game?
It's your move, Mr. Rusk.
Feelings that have been pushed down so deep may take a long time to come to the surface. It was taking Mr. Rusk months. Communicating is apt to be frightening. It must be tenderly encouraged. The feelings may give rise to thoughts that are so confused, they must be reshifted, straightened out, reordered, constantly, continuously. There is no time for anything but endless rearranging, in the vain hope of finding a sequence that's satisfying. There are many ways to talk without using words. There are many ways to connect with another human being. We use our manner, our eyes, our smile, long before we learn to use words. Joe, like a person working with children, has come to understand the wordless language. Many of his patients never talk, but they will express feeling. Many of his patients seem not to understand, yet Joe must find a way of getting them to do what is necessary for their health and welfare. Patients can be handled physically without violence. The kind word, the explanation may be understood hours or weeks after it's been given, for no one knows what such patients hear and remember. Mr. Rusk took 3 months to make his first move. Another 3 were spent in getting up the courage to play hard enough to win. By now, Joe doesn't find the games as one-sided as they used to be. The miracle of a man coming to life is slow, but no less wonderful for that reason. One by one, he regains the little skills by which a human being moves toward relative independence. It can be a delicate, difficult process. We can only follow it from the outside. We learn to notice small changes, but their why and how remain a secret. Growth is always wonderful.
Mr. Rusk, this is our clothes room. This is where you'll be working, if you like it. Now, this will be your job. Folding trousers. Just let the legs hang down like that, fold it over on itself. And each one is marked. There's a size, 34. Now, over here, it's all marked off, 32, 34, and 36. Now, this would go in there. You think you could do that? Does that look easy? 34. That's right. That's it.
It was almost a year before Mr. Rusk could venture out of his shell.
You know, when I called you Harry the other day, you must have thought I was crazy. Well, I must be crazy. I wouldn't be here.
You just mistook me for your son, that's all. I must look like him. People make mistakes like that at times.
Yeah, but I'm crazy. I can see now you don't look like Harry.
Well, from what you told me about him, he must have been a fine fellow.
The best. I can't understand why he had to be. Think nothing much mattered after that.
The war took a lot of nice guys. Must have been hard on your wife, too. She's all alone now, isn't she?
I guess so.
She'll certainly be glad to have you home again.
Nah, I'm finished.
What do you mean? Look how you've improved in the last few months. The doctors will help you to get well.
Not me.
Why not? Look at Jordan, the one who used to talk so much. He has ground privileges now. He can come and go around the grounds as much as he pleases. And look at Andy Bauer. He's working down the farm.
Yeah, but look at Wilmer. He's as lonely as ever.
Well, sometimes I think Wilmer would rather stay here than go home. He likes to play the clown too much. That's the first time I've heard you laugh.
Well, feels good to laugh. I guess I haven't had much to laugh about lately.
Well, you're coming along fine, Mr. Rusk. You're getting better every day.
You really think so, Joe?
I certainly do.
Well, it was good talking to you this way.
Then Mr. Rusk went back in. He'd need time to think over, to comprehend his big step forward. His wife, his home. He'd have to think about them.
It's 5:30, Joe. Going to supper?
Not just yet, Frank. I want to finish this job first.
I guess they told you. I'm leaving next week. Got a swell job in a factory downtown.
Well, some people get all the breaks.
Well, I think it's about time I got away from these people. How about you? When are you moving on?
Well, it won't be this week.
Better hurry up. You aren't getting any younger.
You're not kidding.
Well, I'll see you at supper.
Mr. Rusk, what's the matter? Here, Mr. Rusk, you drop this. Say, I didn't mean what I just said to Frank. I was only trying to be friendly. I am not even thinking of leaving. Mr. Rusk.
Regression is the technical name for Mr. Rusk's medical condition. For Joe, no technical word could describe the situation. After a year of patient, careful work, day by day, hour by hour, he's back at the beginning. The elaborate bridge over which Rusk had been moving toward health, the bridge of which Joe himself was part, has come crashing down. All that day, he worried about Mr. Rusk.
Hello, Joe. What's for dinner?
Huh? Oh, I forget.
You forget? Must have been real good. By the way, Mr. Rusk seems to have had a relapse. He hasn't eaten anything all afternoon. Try and get him to take something. See you later.
Try to get him to take something. Try to pick up the milk you've spilled. Try to remake the statue you've dropped. It was even worse than it had been at the beginning. Then Mr. Rusk had been angry at the world. Now Joe felt that the anger was all focused on him. What's more, he felt he deserved it. What to do about it? He could go home and try to forget about Mr. Rusk, or he could tell Dr. Brand the whole story.
No, it was my fault, all right. I should have known how he'd react to the idea of my leaving.
None of us are perfect. I wouldn't blame myself too much for an accident like this. Have you been thinking about leaving?
No. Well, I must admit that I have thought about it off and on. But you know how it is, Doctor. You get to know some of these patients, you get to like them, some of them. Patients like Mr. Rusk, a few others, you get better. I thought I was in something real big for a while, something where I was doing some good. And I messed it all up.
Don't worry so much, Joe. This might be the most important thing that's happened on your job here. Do me a favor. Forget Mr. Rusk tonight and take your wife to the movies. Mr. Rusk will still be here tomorrow when you come on duty.
Joe hung around the hospital that night after his shift was over. Something had happened to him, too. Something that needed to be thought over, to be talked out. Kate O'Malley was the kind of girl you could talk to. Besides, this sort of thing was her profession.
What did he mean, the most important thing that ever happened to me?
I don't know, but when I first started in mental hospital work, I used to get pretty discouraged when a patient became upset. I used to feel like giving it all up and going in for surgery or pediatrics or something else. But now I realize that every serious illness has its ups and downs.
Mostly downs, it seems to me.
Listen, Joe, you have a lot to give these patients. I probably know more about Rusk's illness than you do, but you probably know more about Rusk.
That's what makes me feel so bad about all this. Rusk was the one I was counting on to come through.
You had a man-to-man relationship that was the right medicine for him. You have a knack for doing that. That's why you were able to help him more.
I guess I didn't think of it that way.
Someday, Rusk will come to realize you're a man he'll have to give up. And he'll accept that, too. You deserve a lot of credit for reaching Rusk when the rest of us failed. It's no easy job.
No, but it's not a bad one either.
Depends on who's doing it.
The world of the mentally ill is not very unlike the world we know. The things in it may appear distorted to us because of the special point of view from which they're seen. What makes the point of view special is the particular pattern of feelings of a particular person. Each pattern is different, as each person is different, depending on what he was and what happened to him. Joe has come to recognize these differences and live with them. He has learned to accept surprising or even silly behavior as long as it's not destructive. He has really come to like what is likable and to try to understand what is not likable. He doesn't feel threatened by patients who express their needs directly. He doesn't feel contempt for grown men who act with the exuberance of children. He takes them as they are. And this acceptance, this liking, is what Joe can contribute to the process of therapy. For hospitals like this one are places where sick people are being helped to recover from serious illness. Joe is part of a team, headed by a psychiatrist, that is constantly trying to speed this recovery, which otherwise might take a lifetime or might never occur at all. Along with some psychotherapy and physical therapy, along with the occupational, recreational, and industrial therapy, there is also the sympathy of being treated with respect, day in and day out, by the one sane person in the ward. time and patience. Joe has them to give. The bridge is beginning to be rebuilt on an even firmer base. It may be easier for Mr. Rusk to move over it the second time, but he cannot be pushed.
It's your move, Mr. Rusk.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.